All right. So where we left off last week, we're starting on chapter 10, two employers, and that's on page 136. Now, when I think about this chapter before having this stuff presented to me, I've heard in the past people talk about some how's it referred to? Like the forgotten chapters. This like some of these later chapters are the forgotten chapters. And I think if there's any one of them that would be a forgotten chapter, it'd probably be this one. Because if I was looking at that for the first time, okay, this is obviously being written to employers. I'm not an employer. This doesn't apply to me, and I'd like to just move right on. But it is incredible when I had this explained to me, and now that we go through it, hopefully you'll find the same thing. There is a lot of great clear-cut direction still when you're mentoring people that we're going to find in here. And that's why we say chapter 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, 5 of the 12 chapters with the doctor's opinion in this book have to do with working with others, step 12. It's not leaving us very much wiggle room to where you need to make up anything or use your opinion or anything when it comes to working with people. All the stuff is laid out beautifully for us. So I want to start, we'll start right at the top of the page, 136. It says, among many employers nowadays, we think of one member who has spent much of his life in the world of big business. He has hired and fired hundreds of men. He knows the alcoholic as the employer sees him. His present views ought to prove exceptionally useful to businessmen everywhere, but let him tell you. I was at one time assistant manager of a corporation department employing 6,600 men. That's a lot of people for just one department of a company. And he's the assistant manager, 6,600 men. One day, my secretary came in saying that Mr. B insisted on speaking with me. I told her to say that I was not interested. I'd warned him several times that he had but one more chance, the ultimatum. Not long afterward, he'd called me from Hartford on 2 successive days, so drunk he could hardly speak. I told him he was through, finally and forever, and fired. My secretary returned to say that it was not Mr. B on the phone, it was Mr. B's brother, and he wished to give me a message. I still expected a plea for clemency, but these words came through the receiver. I just wanted to tell you, Paul jumped from a hotel window in Hartford last Saturday. He left us a note saying you were the best boss he ever had and that you were not to blame in any way. Another time, as I opened a letter which lay on my desk, a newspaper clipping fell out. It was the obituary of one of the best salesmen I ever had. After 2 weeks of drinking, he had placed his toe on the trigger of a loaded shotgun. The barrel was in his mouth. I discharged him for drinking 6 weeks before. Still another experience. A woman's voice came faintly over long distance from Virginia. She wanted to know if her husband's company insurance was still in force. 4 days before, he'd hanged himself in a woodshed. I've been obliged to discharge him for drinking, though he was brilliant, alert, and one of the best organizers I ever know. Here were 3 exceptional men lost to this world because I did not understand alcoholism as I do now. And Will had touched on that in the beginning about this world of ignorance around alcoholism. And he is saying that they're lost to the world just because he did not understand. It sounds like he's taking a little blame for this, that he did not understand alcoholism as he does now. Now, what I want to look at here, this is 3 case studies that they give us. And, how we talk about, hopefully everybody on here has gotten this by now from in the very beginning, we have learned that we have got a hopeless condition being defined as no possibility of a solution and that we are beyond human aid. There's no human solution to our problem. Well, that's not necessarily true when I read this. I believe that what we see here is 3 case studies of men who did solve their problem permanently. And this, as far as I know, is the only viable, permanent human solution that we can have to our problem. And when we talk about the problem, we're really talking about 2 problems that this can come to. This, the loaded shotgun, being hung, jumping out of a window, whatever it might be. One is the drink problem. And I want to take us back to page XXX in the doctor's opinion. And And if you go to the top of the page of XXX and go to the first full sentence, it says, these men were not drinking to escape. You ever hear people in AA meetings say, I drink to escape from my problems? That's not the case. That might be why you went for the first one. But we know that we have that allergy, that once that first one's in, that is why we drink. And he says they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. And it says there are many situations which arise out of this phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. This is a supreme sacrifice that they're talking about that comes out of the phenomenon of craving. The second one, on the top page 137, the guy that shot himself, it said after 2 weeks of drinking, he placed his toe on the trigger. After 2 weeks of drinking, he obviously put in the first one, he had the allergic reaction, and then he went into a spree, which turned into 2 weeks of drinking. And through that spree is where he ended it. He made the supreme sacrifice. Now, there's another thing that we know about with the supreme sacrifice that happens with us with alcoholics that doesn't even have to do with the drinking. And I want to refer you, this is going to be a little bit of preview of coming attractions, but I want to refer back to page 151. Because alcoholics will also take the supreme sacrifice, not just from drinking, but even if we're not drinking. If we're not drinking and yet we're not recovered, we know when we're not drinking as an alcoholic, we cannot be happy. So we're not drinking, but we're not happy. And if we stay that way for a long period of time, let's see what happens. The bottom of page 151, last paragraph, it says, now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better, I work better, and have a better time. A lot of us have heard that. It says, as ex-problem drinkers, that would be us who have recovered, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything, to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. And he will presently try the old game again. Why? For he isn't happy about his sobriety. He's got sobriety, but he isn't happy. And is telling us because of that, he is going to try the old game again. So the mental condition is going to happen where he's not going to reflect on the consequence, and he will pick up again. Why? Go back to the doctor's opinion. We're restless, irritable, and discontent. We get miserable. We think about a few drinks. He's sober and he's not happy. That means he's restless, irritable, and discontent. It's only a matter of time. But let's see where this goes if you just keep doing this, bouncing in and out and in and out. Because as some of you may have heard me say, this paragraph describes perfectly where I was at 16 years sober when I almost took my own life. It says the problem is he cannot picture life without alcohol. But someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. That's where I was. So miserable, but drinking was not an option. The obsession to drink, it had been lifted from me. I was just left with miserable, and picking up a drink was not an option. And I'm so fucking miserable that it only makes sense. The only thing to do is to check out. So what do they say? He's not going to be able to imagine life either with it or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place, and he will wish for the end. So both of these conditions will happen with an alcoholic. What I'm saying is, if you're an alcoholic, whether you're drinking or you're sober, if you are only sober or not recovered, or you are drinking, this is what it will come to. Remember, the doctor said to Bill, the only place you're going to be safe is you're going to end up locked up, you're going to be dead, or you're going to go insane. One of these three things are going to happen. So that's what they're talking about here. Going back to 137, he says, what irony, I became an alcoholic myself. And but for the intervention of an understanding person, I might have followed in their footsteps. My downfall cost the business community unknown thousands of dollars, for it takes real money to train a man for an executive position. And this kind of waste goes on unabated. We think the business fabric is shot through with a situation which might be helped by better understanding all around. So this whole chapter is about better understanding. Nearly every modern employer feels a moral responsibility for the well-being of his help, and he tries to meet these responsibilities. That he has not always done so for the alcoholic is easily understood. To him, the alcoholic has often seemed a fool of the first magnitude because of the employee. Well, so what do you think I mean by that? A fool of the first magnitude? Well, when you tell a guy, like he said right from the first guy, this Paul who jumped through the window, he said that he told the guy he had but one more chance. He gave him an ultimatum. You're going to lose your job if you drink again. And then he calls him drunk twice. So he's done. That's a fool. This is a guy who thought that, and for somebody who does not understand an alcoholic, he's looking at this guy and saying, obviously, you're finding the drink more important than your job. That's a fool. That's as far as he can see. Because of the employee's special ability or his own strong personal attachment to him, the employer has sometimes kept such a man at work long beyond a reasonable period. Some employers have tried every known remedy. A few instances has there been a lack of patience and tolerance, and we, who have imposed on the best of employers, can scarcely blame them if they have been short with us. Here, for instance, is a typical example. An officer of one of the largest banking institutions in America knows I no longer drink. One day, he told me about an executive of the same bank who, from his description, was undoubtedly alcoholic. This seems to me like an opportunity to be helpful. So I spent 2 hours talking about alcoholism, the malady, and describing the symptoms and the results as well as I could. So he's got this guy who's a friend of his who has somebody in his organization who he believes to be alcoholic. So, he finds this a chance to be helpful, right? I can shed some light on what an alcoholic is. I'm sure he told him about the mental condition. He told him about the physical allergy, the whole malady, all the symptoms. And let's see what happened. His comment was very interesting, but I'm sure this man's done drinking. He's just returned from a 3-month leave of absence. He's taken a cure. Sounds like he went to treatment. Looks fine. And to clinch the matter, the board of directors told him this was his last chance. There it is. Ultimatum. He's done. The only answer I could make was that if the man followed the usual pattern, he would go on a bigger bust than ever. I felt this was inevitable and wondered if the bank was doing the man any injustice. Why not bring him into contact with some of our alcoholic crowd? He might have a chance. I pointed out that I had nothing to drink whatever for 3 years, and this in the face of difficulties that would have made 9 out of 10 men drink their heads off. Why not at least afford him an opportunity to hear my story? Oh, no, said my friend. This chap is either through with liquor or he's minus a job. If he has your willpower and guts, he will make the grade. Okay, so now I go back up to the top. This guy had been sober 3 years. He spent 2 hours talking about alcoholism, he says, as best as he could. I wonder if he explained to him about how, with that mental condition, this has nothing to do with willpower, right? And furthermore, this guy is saying, he obviously doesn't get it. He's either through with liquor, he's minus a job. It's a very easy ultimatum. But if you do not understand that a guy is not going to reflect on those consequences, then you didn't get the whole picture of what is wrong with the alcoholic to begin with, why he picks up that first drink. So I wanted to throw up my hands in discouragement, for I saw that I'd failed to help my banker friend understand. He simply could not believe that his brother executive suffered from a serious illness. See page 18 at the top about the serious illness. There was nothing to do but wait. Presently, the man did slip and he was fired. Following his discharge, we contacted him. Without much ado, he, one, accepted, we always accept the solution, he accepted the principles and the procedures that helped us. He is undoubtedly on the road to recovery. To me, this incident illustrates the lack of understanding as to what really ails the alcoholic and the lack of knowledge as to what part employers might profitably take in salvaging their sick employees. If you desire to help, it might be well to disregard your own drinking or lack of it. Whether you're a hard drinker, a moderate drinker, or a teetotaler, I'm not sure what a teetotaler is, but you may have some pretty strong opinions, perhaps prejudices. Those who drink moderately may be more annoyed with an alcoholic than a total abstainer would be. Drinking occasionally and understanding your own reactions, it is possible for you to become quite sure of many things which, so far as the alcoholic is concerned, are not always so. As and I would underline this, as a moderate drinker, you can take liquor or leave it alone. Whenever you want to, you control your drinking. Of an evening, you can go on a mild bender, get up in the morning, shake your head, and go to business. To you, liquor is no real problem. You cannot see why it should be to anyone else, save the spineless and the stupid, right? And do not understand the illness. When dealing with an alcoholic, there may be a natural annoyance that a man could be so weak, stupid, and irresponsible. Even when you understand the malady better, you may feel this feeling rising. This kind of goes back even to what we read in Two Wives as well, with this lack of understanding. A look at the alcoholic in your organization is many times illuminating. Is he not usually bright, fast-thinking, imaginative, and likable? When sober, does he not work hard and have a knack of getting things done? If he had these qualities and did not drink, would he be worth retaining? It's a good question. Should he have the same consideration as other ailing employees? Is he worth salvaging? If your decision is yes, whether the reason be humanitarian or business or both, then the following suggestions may be helpful. So these are great questions. And what this is coming down to is if you do get in a situation where when you're working with somebody and their job may be at stake and maybe there's an opportunity or even a request, if you're working with a guy, that the employer wants to talk to you to get an understanding of what's going on. Maybe they haven't discharged him yet. Maybe they want to, talk to you and see how he's really doing, right? This is a great chapter to go to and talk to him about. Just right out of this book, ask him these questions. If he wasn't an alcoholic, is he worth retaining? Because more often than not, we are bright, intelligent, hardworking people, period. Above average earners as a whole in Alcoholics Anonymous, as I've been told. So they're saying if you do believe he's worth salvaging, so we got the yes. Now, this is where the quote suggestions are going to come from. First question you're going to ask the employer: can you discard the feeling that you are dealing only with habit or stubbornness or weak will? Can you get that idea out of your mind? If this presents difficulty, rereading chapters 2 and 3, where the alcoholic sickness is discussed at length, might be worthwhile. I never caught this before, but they didn't say read chapters 2 and 3. They said reread chapters 2 and 3. So it sounds like when you're talking with an employer, you might want them first off right out of the gate to read chapter 2 and 3. There is a solution more about alcoholism to learn about that mental illness. You as a businessman want to know the necessities before considering the result. If you concede that your employee is ill, he has an illness, can he be forgiven for what he has done in the past? There's another good question. Can his past absurdities be forgotten? Can it be appreciated that underlying he has been a victim of crooked thinking directly caused by the action of alcohol on his brain? I well remember the shock I received when a prominent doctor in Chicago told me of cases where pressure of the spinal fluid actually ruptured the brain. No wonder an alcoholic is strangely irrational. Who wouldn't be with such a fevered brain? Normal drinkers are not so affected, nor can they understand the aberrations of the alcoholic. That is why we need to teach them. Your man has probably been trying to conceal a number of scrapes, perhaps pretty messy ones. They may be disgusting. You may be at a loss to understand how such a seemingly above-board chap could be so involved. But these scrapes can generally be charged, no matter how bad, to the abnormal action of alcohol on his mind. It's nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with judgment. When drinking or getting over a bout, an alcoholic, sometimes the model of honesty when normal, will do incredible things. Afterwards, his revulsion will be terrible. Nearly always, these antics indicate nothing more than temporary conditions. This is not to say that all alcoholics are honest and upright when drinking, do you think? Of course, that isn't so, and such people often may impose on you. Seeing your attempt to understand and help, some men will try to take advantage of your kindness, raise their bottom for them. Just give me another chance, right? Underline, if you are sure your man does not want to stop, he may as well be discharged. The sooner the better. There's a clear-cut direction right there. So that bears to mind, what is the first thing we do that we learned in chapter 7, working with others, when the very first thing, it's on top of page 90. What do we do when we first get a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous? It says when you talk to them, you're going to try to find out all you can about them. And it goes into saying the most important thing we're going to want to find is if he really wants to quit drinking. And it says right out of the gate, if he doesn't want to quit drinking, let him go. Don't chase him down. You're going to spoil a later opportunity. But the first thing you want to know is if he doesn't want to quit, you're not there to try to convince him, because that's just not going to happen. He's got to want to do it. And now they're saying the same thing for the employer. If you sit down with this guy, this is what you need to find out from him. Does he really want to quit? And not just does he say it, do you feel that is the case? So it says, if you're sure your man does not want to, that he does not want to stop, you may as well just let him go. The sooner the better. Let him get to his bottom, because it's never going to change. That's what they're telling you. You're not doing him a favor by keeping him on. Firing such an individual may prove a blessing to him. It may be just the jolt that he needs. I know in my own particular case that nothing my company could have done would have stopped me for underlying so long as I was able to hold my position. I could not possibly realize how serious my situation was, right? Functioning alcoholic. Yeah, I drink, and I drink too much sometimes. I still got a job, and I still pay my bills, and I can still function. And that might be the jolt. Why prolong that? If he doesn't want to stop, let him get to his bottom. Same thing that was said. What did they say about the wife? If he goes on another drinking binge, what do? Cheerfully is the word they use. Cheerfully see him through the next spree. Go on and some more. Get to the freaking bottom. Get to the bottom. Don't try to stop. Completely the opposite logic. Get to your bottom. Cheer him on through the spree. Fire him if he does not want to stop. Had they fired me first, and had they then taken steps to see that I was presented with the solution contained in this book, there's a big caveat. Seeing that I was presented with the solution contained in this book, I might have returned to them 6 months later, a well man. 6 months. But there are many men who want to stop, and with them, you can go far. Your understanding treatment of their cases will pay dividends. So it sounds like that the employer can learn some treatments, some things that he can do. Perhaps you have such a man in mind. He does want to quit drinking, and you want to help him, even if it be only a matter of good business. But underlying, you now know more about alcoholism if you've read chapters 2 and 3, or certainly if I've helped you read through it. You can see that he is mentally and physically sick. That's number one, understanding the guy. You are willing to overlook his past performances. Such an approach is made something like this. State that you know about his drinking and that it must stop. You might say you appreciate his abilities, would like to keep him, but cannot if he continues to drink. A firm attitude at this point has helped many of us. Next, he can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. Same thing we learned as mentors. We do not moralize, lecture, or condemn. That if this was done formally, it was because of misunderstanding. If possible, express a lack of hard feelings towards him. At this point, underline, it might be well to explain alcoholism, the illness. So see, we have already taught the employer about alcoholism, the illness. And we're saying now when you're sitting down with this guy, now you explain it to him. Explain to him what his condition is. Say that you believe he is a gravely ill person. And with this qualification, being perhaps fatally ill, does he want to get well? I'm going to tell you what I know about an alcoholic. I believe you are one. Drinking's got to stop. Do you want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics, being warped and drugged, do not want to quit. But does he? And here's the next step. Does he want to? These are the same questions we learned, again, going back to page 90 and 91, working with a new guy. This is exactly what we do. One, you want to know if he wants to quit, but here's the second big piece. Will he take every necessary step and submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? Are you willing to go to any lengths for this? Those are the two things that you need to know from this guy. If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he's fooling you? And that after rest and treatment, he'll be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. Be satisfied he is not deceiving himself or you. Use your own judgment. Whether you mention this book is a matter for your discretion. If he temporizes and still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer, he might as well be discharged after the next bender, which, if an alcoholic, he is almost certain to have. Remember, the time and day will come when he will drink again. You should understand that emphatically. One more time, if you think you can handle it and control it, you think you're not one, you got one chance. Screw it up, you're done. Either you're dealing with a man who can and will. How many times have we read that? Cannots and will nots, right? Either you're dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. It's that simple. If not, why waste time with him? This may seem severe, but it is usually the best course based on their experience. However, after satisfying yourself that your man does want to recover and that he will go to any lengths to do so, 2 questions, you may suggest a definite course of action. For most alcoholics who are drinking or who are just getting over a spree, a certain amount of physical treatment is desirable and even imperative. The matter of physical treatment should, of course, be referred to your own doctor. Whatever the method, its object is to thoroughly clear the mind and body of the effects of alcohol. I will stop right there. They're talking about is what would today mean either detox or a treatment center. And what they're telling us here is the main object of what this physical treatment is. That's what you get from a treatment center or from a detox. Its objective is one thing, to thoroughly clear the mind and body of the effects of alcohol. What does that mean? We're going to separate you from alcohol for a while. What does that mean? We're going to get you sober. And it ends there. You're just going to be not drinking for a while till your mind's clear. Okay, that's all they do. After that, his mind is clear. You can work with him at that point. In competent hands, this seldom takes long, nor is it very expensive. Well, remember, this is 1939. It can be very expensive nowadays. Your man will fare better if placed in such physical condition that he can think straight and no longer craves liquor. If you propose such a procedure to him, it may be necessary to advance the cost of treatment, but we believe it should be made plain that any expense will later be deducted from his pay. It is better for him to feel fully responsible. If your man accepts your offer, it should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. Highlight and underline that. There's going back to treatment. It is a small part of the picture, being sober. Remember what we read on page 19. Being sober is what? Separation from alcohol is just a beginning. Though you are providing him with the best possible medical attention, that underline, he should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. And they don't do that at treatment centers. They don't undergo change of hearts. To get over drinking, underline, will require a transformation of thought, and it will require a transformation of attitude. We all had to place recovery above everything, for without recovery, we would have lost both home and business. Can you have every confidence in his ability to recover? Well, on this subject of confidence, can you adopt the attitude that so far as you are concerned, this will be strictly a personal matter, that his alcoholic derelictions, the treatment about to be undertaken, will never be discussed without his consent? Good direction. It might be well to have a long chat with him on his return. To return to the subject matter of this book, it contains full suggestions, actually we know they're clear-cut directions, by which the employee may solve his problem. To you, some of the ideas which it contains are novel. Perhaps you're not quite in sympathy with the approach we suggest. By no means do we offer it as the last word on the subject. But so far as we're concerned, underline, it has worked for us. We've read that before. We have no monopoly on God. We don't say that we have the only way out. We simply have what they just said, a way that worked for us. If you got a way that you think might work for you, try it. Well, all we have is something that we know works for us, and rarely does anyone fail when they do it. After all, are you not looking for results rather than methods? So what they're saying, if you don't agree with it, you think it's kind of quirky, the spiritual experience he's going to have and all this, you may not like it, you may not agree with it. But if you want to keep the guy, are you looking for results, or are you going to just judge this based on the methods that what you think it's going to work or not? We're showing you, these guys are saying there's been over 100 of us at this point. Every one of us succeeded with it. When the medical fraternity has said that you're hopeless, they couldn't offer anything. So it's worked for us. So it really doesn't matter how you feel about it. Are you looking for results or not? Whether your employee likes it or not, he will learn the grim truth about alcoholism. It's the first thing we have to do. That won't hurt him a bit, even though he does not go for this remedy. How? So if he does, what they're saying is if he doesn't want to do this or doesn't want to quit, well, one thing that's happened, he's learned the grim truth about alcoholism. Hopefully the guy has at least gotten into his mind. Just when you're working with a new guy, if he leaves later, hopefully you've at least planted the truth about alcoholism with the mind and the body. And if he thinks he can go control it at some point and finds he can't, he may reflect back on what you said about what's going to happen. You're not going to reflect on the consequences, right? We suggest you draw the book to the attention of the doctor who is to attend your patient during treatment. If the book is read the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. So we've read that before too. Best time to approach a guy is right after he comes off that bender, when he's depressed and really feels down, really feels defeated, really feels hopeless. That's the best time to do it. We hope the doctor will tell the patient the truth about his condition, whatever that happens to be. And when the man is presented with this volume, it is best that no one tell him he must abide by its suggestions. The man must decide for himself. You are better, of course, that you changed attitude, plus the contents of this book will turn the trick. You got two things going on. Your changed attitude, because you've learned about this, and now you've got the contents of this book to give him a solution. Hopefully that'll turn the trick. In some cases it will, and in others it may not. But we think that if you persevere, the percentage of successes will gratify you. As our work spreads and our numbers increase, we hope your employees may be put in personal contact with some of us. So remember, this is very early on when this book was written. So hopefully later he can be put in contact with us, right? They didn't have meetings all over that. But meanwhile, and I would underline this, we are sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of this book alone, because the directions are in here. I think I'm going to stop right there. It's a good place to stop for today.